vote on in open session, and we also held a conference call with our legal counsel. Going to ask Mr. Getz to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin this meeting tonight, I would ask everybody for a moment of silence. Today is 9/11, and Kent County lost two of its own fighting in Afghanistan, so I ask you specifically to remember Nick Spry and Jared Thompson. So a moment of silence, please. Thank you. First things first, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of our August 14th open session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm also looking for a motion to approve the minutes of our August 3rd, 2017 open session.
So moved.
I need a second. Okay. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty. Superintendent's report. We will start with personnel. Mr. Silva, please.
Certainly, as you know, during closed session tonight, we discussed personnel actions, and we bring the docket to you, the group of personnel actions before you tonight for your approval.
Thank you. I'm looking for a vote to approve personnel action. I move that we approve the personnel action. Is there a second? Second. I call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm recusing myself.
Thank you. The only other topic on our agenda tonight, which is why everyone is here, is transportation. So the rest of the evening is going to be devoted to transportation. Dr. Couch is going to speak, and then we are going to open the floor up to 2 hours for public discussion if we need that. Okay? Dr. Couch.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to begin tonight's meeting by providing some background information on the current situation. The Kent County Public Schools has been struggling with a budget shortfall for well over 5 years. The shortfall is attributed to a reduction in state and local funding, which makes it very difficult to cover operational costs for the school district. We have taken every step to reduce our operational footprint for the last 3 years. 2 years ago, the school system determined it could no longer support operational costs with local and state funding allocated to Kent County Public Schools. The district then began to look at consolidation of schools in an attempt to reduce the operational budget. Last year, the projected shortfall for FY18, which is current year, was approximately $2 million. The Board of Education voted to close and consolidate 2 elementary schools to reduce operational costs by a little over $1 million, leaving a remaining shortfall of $1 million. The district considered additional ways to save money, including reduction of programs, increased class sizes. However, we looked at programs like our CTE program at the high school, but ultimately the Board of Ed was not in favor of any of those remedies. The school district requested a special appropriation from the governor's office to provide assistance, financial assistance, to address our projected shortfall. The Assembly passed a bill that provided special funding for school districts with declining enrollment and universal pre-K, which we are one of 2 counties in the state of Maryland that has a universal pre-K. Kent County was a recipient for that bill of approximately $200,000. In a recent legislative audit, it was suggested, and other school districts were received audit findings for not considering the economy of savings in student transportation. Therefore, in an effort to identify additional areas to economize, the district released a request for proposal for student transportation services. 2 bidders responded: the Kent County Bus Contractors LLC and Reliable Transportation. The Kent County Bus Contractors LLC had been the district's bus contractor for over 20 years. And their bid was notably higher than previous years, seeking increased costs of $1.2 million for a 4-year period. Reliable Transportation, a qualified bidder, submitted a bid that would provide a $400,000 savings over a 4-year period. The district was facing a $1 million shortfall and would not have been fiscally responsible to obligate the district for another $1.2 million increase to our operational budget. By law, the school district's budget must be balanced, and we are unable to approve a budget that is in the red. Without any hope of seeing increased funding, we had few options. Reliable's commitment to the Board of Education, therefore the bid was awarded to Reliable. Reliable's commitment to the Board of Ed was to focus on local drivers, and Reliable held hiring fairs to recruit locally. At one point, Reliable reported to us that they had approximately 20 local hires, some of which were previous drivers for the county, and some were new to the county as drivers. They were given offers of employment, however, some became unresponsive to calls from Reliable. At that time, it became apparent that additional drivers had to be certified to fill in the driver shortage. My staff, and Mr. Wheeler in particular, Donna Gorham in particular, myself, there was many of us who worked long hours beginning 2 weeks ago before school started to get drivers certified. Some community members have raised questions about driver qualifications. I can assure you that all the drivers are required and were required to meet the criteria set by the Board of Ed. Drivers had to complete criminal background investigation, pre-employment drug testing, DOT physicals, completion of pre-service training, and behind-the-wheel training. I know this because we had to hire additional behind-the-wheel trainers to help us in getting the certification. Kent County Public Schools has the final approval on all drivers. For most districts, school busing is always difficult during the first couple weeks of school. However, I know it is. However, as you will note, this year was incredibly difficult, and it was compounded due to a high number of route change requests and Reliable's inability to maintain a full staff of drivers, qualified drivers. During the first week, we had 3 no-shows, 2 of which were local, and 1 was from Baltimore. Today, a local driver did not show up for work and did not call to inform the employer that she would not report to work. It is apparent that the no-show drivers has created confusion and in some ways demonstrates a coordinated effort for which we are unsure in terms of how to deal with at this time. I'm appalled that someone would accept a job as a school bus driver and then have such little regard for the children that they serve and not provide notice so they can be covered. Wait a minute. No. In addition, there have been reports of driver harassment throughout the week, adding yet another layer of complications. Several school personnel who accompany drivers on their routes witnessed these events. We are documenting these events, and if they need to be reported to proper authorities, that will be done as well. Another comment I wanted to remark is last week we experienced a large volume of daily phone calls, and I completely understand it. You should call. I must say, though, we are a very small district. We have very limited in terms of our personnel. So in order to manage these calls, I dedicated additional staff, 3 to be in particular, to answer, retrieve, and return calls. All reports of unsafe driving or complaints about drivers have and will continue to be investigated. If you were unable to speak to the person whom you originally called, I apologize. We made and are making every effort to return calls with the limited personnel. We stayed till approximately 11 and 12 o'clock every night trying to triage the calls to determine which were the most important so that we could reach those families and try to figure out which ones we could wait, or maybe perhaps complaints that we already knew about. I'm also concerned that some of the people who stayed to make these calls and were trying to help were themselves feeling very defeated because of the profanity that was used by some of the callers. That's not helpful. I respectfully ask that the community help us become part of the solution. We know student transportation has become very frustrating. It is for us too. We don't blame you. You have every right to be frustrated and upset. And these problems have multiple layers. We know transportation is a priority, especially in a rural county. We are actively recruiting bus drivers. Today, we received 2 phone calls from 2 Maryland bus drivers who are interested in driving for the students of Kent County. But that doesn't solve the immediate problem, and that does not solve the situation that we're in at this moment. In conclusion, what I want to say is the Kent County Public Schools, let me just finish, please. In conclusion, the Kent County Public Schools expect students to be transported to their schools safely, efficiently, and timely. And they're not. I know they're not. I am working with legal counsel to find immediate solutions to these complicated and multi-layered problems. You have our commitment, my commitment, this board's commitment, that we will put in the hours it takes to find a suitable solution as quickly as we can. I've already contacted the Maryland State Department of Education. I've been in close contact with them since Friday. We are working together to see how we can qualify drivers. I've also sent messages to all my colleagues on the Eastern Shore and throughout Maryland, asking if they have bus drivers, buses perhaps, that they could loan to us and help us through the crisis. I sent an urgent message as well to legal counsel to help us resolve this as quickly as possible. That's what we were doing behind closed session. I know that I can't share a lot of those details because I am not going to jeopardize the situation. But one of the things that we are exploring beginning Wednesday, I completely understand. You all have jobs. You need to get to work. We need to take care of these issues. And so we are going to look at providing early morning care for a short-term basis in the event. I understand how you're going to get. I don't know yet that at this point.
Excuse me. Guys, could I ask for some courtesy? Let Dr. Couch finish her statement, and then the floor will be opened up to you, please.
We understand. I completely understand. But at this point, we have such inconsistent ability to bring the kids to school. Many of you, I know that's why you're here, and that is why we are having this meeting. Excuse me. This is why.
County bus drivers were reliable. Should have never changed it.
Excuse me, guys, can you please let Dr. Couch finish, and then we will open the floor to you. I'm just asking for some courtesy so we can follow an orderly procession. Could you please let Dr. Couch finish? Thank you.
Speed it up.
I'll speed it up. I will. So we will look at before care for those of you that need that assistance. We're looking at major locations where we can do that. Our intent is to bring this to a quick conclusion so that we can get back to the real work of getting your kids to school and allowing them to have the transportation that you deserve and that they deserve. But at this point, I don't have a finalized statement or solution that I can announce because we are working through council at this time. But I assure you, we will work as quickly as we can. We know that it's important to you. We will do the best that we can, and we will ensure that we can get this resolved quickly. And that concludes my statement. I would just say that to the end, the administration and the Board of Education are exploring all suitable and viable options to meet the goals.
Our other bus drivers. Yeah, but they sold their buses because it couldn't work.
Thank you. I am going to read the list in the order that names people signed up. In terms of, like I said, I'm hopeful that we're opening the floor up for 2 hours. Hopefully that will accommodate everybody. I'm going to ask you to try to limit your excuse me please. I'm going to ask you to limit your statements to 3 minutes so that everyone who has signed up gets an opportunity to talk. I'm going to ask you to be courteous, because we're going to be courteous. The first person, it's just one name. Is it Roz?
Just real quick, there's a couple of parents back here that said they did not get the sign.
Thank you.
So can they add their names?
They sure can.
It's right
Can you guys introduce yourselves please, so we know who we're talking to?
How are we supposed to say
My name is Trish McGee. I'm the president of the Board of Education. My board members from the left are
Wendy Costa?
Jeff Reed.
Brian Williams.
Joe Genson.
Alrighty. While parents are continuing to sign up, I'm going to start calling off names, please. It's only a first name, and I'm not quite sure that I'm pronouncing it correctly. Someone named Riz, R-I-S.
Is there a last name?
No, there is no last name. Alrighty. My second name, Charles Spray. Sir, would you come up to the microphone, please?
I work with 25 Mexicans who can't speak English, but every day I can get them to a job with a map. These bus drivers are showing up with names and street addresses. They've got no map. They don't know where they're going. Some of the local people who have ridden the bus are asking the kids where they go next.
Yeah.
My daughter,
Elementary school kids.
2 days in a row now, their bus goes into Chesapeake Landing. Friday and today, the driver was lost. Today, he never even picked up the kids. He got so confused and so turned around, he just left and took her to school. You know, who's responsible for getting these people where they need to be? You know, who practiced with these drivers to get where they're going? The route doesn't change. It's the same every day. I can't figure that out. Nobody drove them around. They had to figure out how to get to where they're going. We had kids in our neighborhood dropped off 2 miles from their house. The bus driver said, "Get off." 6th grade kids. He said, "This is where I'm supposed to go. This is what it says on the paper. Get off." And the second day, the parents met him there and tried to explain to him, "If you take this route, you drop all 6 kids off. It's a direct route to where you're going." He said, "No, you're not telling me how to do my job reliable does." So dropping all 6th grade kids 2 miles from their house, had to cross Cooper's Lane, which any of these officers who sat on Cooper's Lane catch people doing 75 mile an hour every day. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Tasha Johnson? Is there a Tasha Johnson?
You don't want to speak. Some people thought it was a sign.
Okay, I got you. Okay. Michelle Heffron?
How about Michael?
Okay, I'm sorry. It's an untraditional spelling. Sorry, sir. Sorry.
By way of disclosure, I do not have children riding school buses right now. I live in Wharton, but I have managed school transportation for 3 school districts in the past. I have. One was the third largest in Pennsylvania, and one was one of the smallest. Most of what Dr. Couch has said is true. You've got to understand, the problems are real. And the problem, I don't know if anybody's here from Reliable.
We invited them to come.
Wait a minute, Mr. Dixon, is that Mr. Dixon in the back of the room?
Mr. Dixon, I apologize for, bringing you into the crowd. I don't know if any, well, now that we know Mr. Dixon's here. Reliable is taking on a pretty tough task here, and this county is not an easy county to transport children in. Yes, you had drivers who have been doing it for 20 years. It would have been great to keep them on board. But like Dr. Couch said, finances and the law didn't allow that to happen. My concern, and having taken over transportation for a school district once, my concern is, where are those drivers that used to drive? Why didn't they take jobs? I mean, all that would happen...
Excuse me, guys, please.
I'm not...
This is not to be a confrontation. This is not to be a give and take. This is an opportunity for everybody, no matter what side of the line they seem to be on, to have an opportunity to speak without somebody hijacking their 3 minutes. So I would ask everybody to be respectful of everyone else. Thank you.
No, excuse me, I'm still speaking.
No.
I'm still...
You asked a question and we were trying to answer it.
Yes.
We're not being disrespectful.
I understand, and that's a question I have as well.
Where are the other bus drivers?
That's
so
the
I
point.
wanted to answer that for you. Some of them were told to
Danielle.
Danielle.
I'm
And
sorry.
then some of them lost their jobs. Some of them lost their pension when Reliable came. That's your answer.
I don't think that's accurate.
That's my point. My point is, if I can finish.
Wait, excuse me,
Yes,
guys.
Trish, we talked to you, you being with the newspaper, and you said that you were going to cover it and you were going to come with the complaints that parents had.
Guys.
And you didn't do it.
Wait.
When you put your paper in, it had nothing that any of the parents that you talked to, anything to do with anything that they said.
Wait a minute.
You lied.
I did not
did.
lie. We're dealing with one thing at a time.
Yes, you did, Trish. Yes, you did.
Did you?
We spoke to you.
When I get my opportunity to speak, I will address that question. Anyhow, could we let Mr. Heffron finish what he's saying, please?
You lied.
As I said, I went through this before with another school district, where the drivers who were taken out of their jobs with the school district decided to stand down. For whatever reason. Perhaps they didn't feel the money was right. Perhaps they didn't feel the company treated them well. I don't know. I don't have the answers here, but I do know that vitriol, rudeness, harassing people is not going to help solve this problem. You have a real problem. You have a difficult county to work with. And all I would suggest is you work with your school board, work with Reliable. They're the people you're dealt with right now. There's no change in that, as far as I know. So try to take a more positive route. Obviously, I've lost. Thank you.
Guys, please. What part of my asking you to be courteous don't you understand? I understand it. I'm trying to let you speak.
When the bus drivers are harassing our kids going to school, that's an issue.
When, ma'am, you can speak your mind when I call your name, okay? The next person on the list is Melissa Porter.
Thank you. I have to say, although everybody's just really angry, I think we're beyond the point of being able to kind of, what I hope is that we can all get our statements in and do it calmly. But there were a couple things that I found very very concerning. First off, in the board meeting that occurred on March 3rd, it was the bidding contract between Reliable, and then both attorneys were here. There were some things that were kind of alarming because, you know, Mr. Sheehan was the lawyer for the current Kent County bus contracting. You know, he pointed out the co-owner does have a criminal record. She's, you know, on the welfare call and was on probation for 2 years. She, you know, obviously maybe she's not driving a bus, but that says to me volumes regarding, you know, I'm personally concerned about the list of drivers. Is it a correct list? You kind of lose your credibility on that. In addition to that, you know, again, I understand money has to be saved, but, you know, I mean, we're hearing stories, and in particular, my daughter on a bus whose kids are being dropped off, you know, miles away from their home. Elementary school kids getting told to F off and sit that and da-da-da-da-da. You know, I mean, to me, again, you know, it's just very, very concerning. The stops, you know, according to Comar, it states that bus stops are outlined by local districts and that they have to be deemed safe. And so you have kids that live in Fairleigh who were dropped off in Butlertown and told, this is your stop today, now get out. You know, again, that's serious safety issues because you have kids not only, you know, they may not know the neighborhood, you know, other people kind of try to step in maybe and get them to safety, but you can't guarantee anything like that. You know, again, I mean, there's a lot, you know, they were advertising on the radio 2 weeks before school. Hey, Eastern Shore drivers, the hiring fair that you had mentioned in August 14th minutes, Dr. Couch. You know, that's not a very long time to get urines, background checks, medical checks, and then, you know, again, I'm 40, and I know how long it takes for us to get background checked. Again, it could be a different process, but you're working with kids, so I can't see that it would be. The aides that were assigned to the buses last week, now I know, again, you're trying to solve an issue, but there is a process in which school attendants, aides, they have a 2-hour, you know, school, like a training they have to go to, first aid training, and then instruction related to the duties of the attendant. You know, was that done? You know, and again, there are certain things that can't just be done to make a quick fix. You know, I have a hard time understanding why a decision was made to trust a bus contract that's in Baltimore that, you know, there are a lot of people in Baltimore who think the Eastern Shore is all one combined little town sometimes, you know? I mean, people don't understand the dynamics of the people, the roads, our kids, you know, and again, no matter what you're paying, you know, now you're talking about legal fees that you're still currently paying. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that are out there that I think could have been, I really feel that this was shortcut. I feel that it was unfair to our students. The damage is done. No matter what you do, putting old bus drivers in, whatever, the damage has been done. You know, you've got elementary school kids, it takes one incident for them to be traumatized to not want to do that. To sit down and I'll hit you on the way back, you know, that's really playing with fire as a parent. And I think everybody out here can understand that. There are many of you that are born and raised in Kent County. There's never been a bus that I know of, again, who just didn't show up. You know, again, I get a robocall today, Kent County Middle School, a bus didn't show. Well, shoot, I've never been, I had to call, you know, we don't know what buses our kids are riding. You got to call the school, and sometimes that's not even right. You know, so what do you do about that? And then what are you doing dropping kids off at a 7-Eleven in Chestertown on the main road that live way up by Washington College? Like, you know, I mean, it's just silly. And then you have other students who may have special needs, you know, and are these people talking to, you know, I mean, there's so much, I find it utterly impossible to be able to point out all of the issues. And yes, in addition to maybe Dr. Couch reaching out to MSDE. I think a lot of parents, including myself, reached out to MSDE. And the safety equipment that needs to be on the buses, that was supposed to have been done months ago. So again, you see buses pulling off to the shoulder, which is against COMAR regs, and stopping, waving people along, and then letting the kids off. Again, that's against COMAR reg, and there's the mess has already been made. And I don't want to take up time from other people, but I just, the right person, all it takes is one kid to get hurt. One kid. And what's going to happen when that happens? And I can only hope that the parent would have the ability to sue everybody.
Rebecca Harris-Smith.
Okay. Hi. So I have a question. We have 3 minutes. I have a list of 18 questions. I started a group called Support Our Schools on Facebook. Yeah. Francois is one of my co-founders. I'm sorry. You're right. Here's the thing. We polled our group of 900 members and we put together the 18 most relevant and cohesive questions. And so I'm hoping that you'll bear with us as we go through all 18 questions. Hopefully, they're all things you all want the answers to, too. So is that okay?
Well, there's 2 of you, so that
Okay,
gives
that
you 6
helps.
minutes.
Well, I have to have Wayne Starkey, who's volunteered to step in. He'll volunteer. So we're good. All right, so I sent these questions to the board ahead of time to help them be able to answer them here on the spot tonight. I also sent them to a representative from Reliable, but I don't think that he's going to be answering. So I hope that Mr. Dixon is still in the room. Okay, good. Oh, there. Oh, you're like right there. Okay. Okay. What steps will be taken to prevent delays caused by traffic or weather, given the increased distance some of our new drivers must travel to work? And what policy will be in place to notify parents should such delays occur?
Yes, definitely. Notify.
Well, I think that's a fair question. And I think that I can only reiterate what I said quite a while ago. Our commitment is to have local drivers. The problem we have is that many of the local drivers who made commitments to work for us did not tell us until very late, near the time that we were starting school, that they would not be coming to work. Or, even to this day, we haven't been notified. They just did not come to work. I'm not saying to begrudge any of these folks because it's their right to work where they choose, but that required us. I don't know if it amplifies or just records. Oh.
Do you have a list of the people that were supposed to work? Local?
This is fine. Is this better?
Define the term local.
So, I define the term local as people who had worked in Kent County Public Schools before. And people who applied who lived in around the Kent County area. I think that really caused a problem that we tried to overcome early in the year. Someone mentioned they heard advertising. That was as we began to realize that several drivers had declined or decided not to accept offers. But we continue to make the attempt to hire local drivers, and we've had to supplement those drivers with people from Baltimore. Now, as to the second question, what can we do? Just continue to hire. And we're committed to that. We will continue to try to hire. We don't think that having drivers commute is the best policy, but we're trying to do that in order to provide the best service that we can.
Part of that question also was how the board was going to handle communicating and notifying the parents. And we're wondering if there are going to be improvements in the notification process.
Right. One of the things that we began to do is to, obviously we tried to call all the parents and it became overwhelming for 3 to 5 people to try to do all of that. And it was also increasingly difficult for the schools to do that as well. So we began, using robocalls and trying to track them that way and get information out.
We're not all getting them. And if you don't know the bus number, the robocall's not doing any good. Yeah. If you don't know the kids' bus number after the today, I got a phone call. I'm like, an hour away. I can't just stop and go pick my kid up because the bus decided not to come up with school. And 40 minutes later, after school, that out.
Go ahead, please.
I have a really quick follow-up for Mr. Dixon. The local hires, did they actually, were there W-2s for those?
Several of them, there were W-2s, even direct deposit forms. Others, there were applications on file and offer letters. I'm not going to mention the names of individuals because I don't think that's appropriate, but yes. We had hiring fairs at the Holiday Inn. Folks showed up, they filled out applications. The second time around, they were given offer letters with starting wages. Even up until the weekend before school started, one showed up at the route meeting and did not come to work the first day.
I expect the bus drivers to know where they're going, and our leader don't know where she is up there.
Question number 2. According to the article in the Kent County News dated August 15, 2017, covering the August 14th BOE meeting, Dr. Couch stated there were 20 local drivers hired. That was also mentioned tonight. Here's a quote from the paper. Couch said Reliable has hired 20 drivers for KCPS so far, and all of them local. Now, some of them may be new to driving for the local school district, but they are all still local hires. Did all of those drivers report to work on Tuesday morning? If not, what happened?
That would be a question for Mr. Dixon. Guys, I'm going to ask you to be quiet so that Mr. Dixon can ask the questions that's being asked.
Right, but I don't know why they didn't come to work, sir. I don't have that answer.
What she said earlier in the meeting was that Reliable had reported back to them that there were 20 local hires. So I see why they're deferring.
That's not that's his answer.
The question, did they all report to work Tuesday morning? No. If not, what happened? I'm sorry, I'm going to try to do a better job with this. Some told us that they were not working. Some told us they'd accepted other employment. Some did not tell us anything, they just did not come to work. I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. There were a couple who said that, again, shortly the week before school started, that they were willing to work but did not come to work Tuesday morning.
Question 3. Some parents have been told that the county paid to have flashing lights and swing bars and cameras added to buses. Is that true? If so, why were there still buses without the safety equipment installed? And, do I wait to get that follow-up? Do the current buses meet COMAR regulations and KCPS specs? And was equipment previously installed in Reliable's buses? So equipment from the old buses, was that moved to new buses?
Right. No, the equipment stays with the bus. when we released the RFP, all of the required equipment met COMAR regulations. COMAR does not require strobe light. It says you may have it, and it also says you may have crossbar. Case in point, Queen Anne's has gone back and forth. I was talking to... No, she's just saying that it wasn't... I'm just saying that Queen Anne's has gone back and forth with crossbars. I talked to the MBA and the DOT, and they said for a longest time they did not require crossbars, and just recently they reinstalled them again, just within the last 3 years.
Are they required?
Rebecca, if I could respectfully cut in. Dr. Couch, what are you doing? What are you doing with the videos I showed of you, the 5 stops where the red and yellow lights were never activated and students got off the bus? What are you actively doing to fix that problem?
Right. I said earlier...
I don't care about the stop bars or the stop signs.
I was answering her question, Mr. Starkey.
That is part of my question. It's the same difference. It's in relation. It's still safety equipment. What are we actively doing to correct that?
Okay.
I gave you those
I know you
Thursday.
did. We talked for a long time in my office.
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Yes, we did. So, with regard to the strobes and the strobe lights and the crossbars, we ordered the piece of equipment, all of those equipment. They're into the maintenance, and the decision was to have them installed. They have not been installed yet. We just received all of them last week.
Every school bus has a yellow and red light on the top. It is not made without it.
Right.
Why are those not activated when students are getting off the bus?
Everyone, we can't hear.
So, the first part of that question I asked was that we were told that the county paid to actually have the flashing lights and the swing bars and the cameras. So we have that equipment now, and we're trying to get it on the buses. Thank you.
That's money. That's cost.
How much did that cost?
That's right.
The buses that don't have that equipment installed, are they still in use, or are they on hold until? Okay.
Why are they still in use? They're meeting level requirements, right?
They're not. They are not. The buses meet COMAR regulation. Individual counties can require additional equipment.
What about the
No, they don't. We're talking about the strobe lights and the crossbars.
What about the flashing lights? Isn't that a requirement? They require that requirement.
Why are my kids on a bus with no radio so we can contact the drivers? That's what I want to know. When they're lost. No.
Buses don't have radio.
Guys, again, everyone can have an opportunity to talk. We cannot move forward in an orderly fashion if people just decide in the audience to talk. You will get an opportunity to talk. Rebecca and Francois, we're going to let them ask their 14 or their 18 questions, but they can't get through their list and get an answer because we keep interrupting them. Guys, please.
You're going to want all the questions.
Do you want to hear the answers, or do you just want to make a lot of noise? Okay, well, how about letting them ask the questions? Thank you.
Question 4. How will you resolve our transportation needs if you ultimately determine that Reliable cannot fulfill the contract? Do you believe that Reliable Transportation is currently in breach of contract based on the issues from last week?
The response that I can give at this time is we're exploring all options.
That's not going to get my daughter to school.
It's not an answer that I can discuss publicly at this point, and I refuse to do that because I'm not going to jeopardize any position we might be taking in the future.
Question 5. There have been many reports of drivers not driving safely while our kids are on their buses. Some parents have taken photos and videos as proof, like my friend Wayne Starkey. What is being done to ensure the safety of our children?
As I stated earlier, we have investigated and are still investigating any reports of unsafe driving and unsafe practices on the bus.
Working parents have been particularly hard hit by missing and late buses. How will the school accommodate families who cannot afford to lose more time at work? Will early drop-off be accommodated until the situation can be fixed?
I think I talked about that as well. We're exploring that already, and we're looking into that as well. Hopefully we can have some information out the next day or two. I would also ask if parents can help us with that because, I think
Were dry runs required of drivers so they wouldn't get lost on the first day? We have heard there were some no-shows Tuesday morning, if that is correct. Were the drivers required to practice their routes during the day on Tuesday before the PM bus runs? Will future hires be required to practice their routes?
The answer is, the answer to that question is yes, dry runs. I hope that's a little better. All right. The answer to that question is yes, dry runs were performed. You heard that there were no shows Tuesday morning. Yes, there were no shows, as I'd said before. If that is correct, were the drivers required to practice their routines on Tuesday morning before the PM? Yes, they did go back out. And we also had many of the drivers who were more familiar run through the routes with those drivers who were not as familiar. Will future hires be required to practice the routes? Absolutely. It's a necessity. And even the current drivers continue to go through their routes. There have been some changes in the routes, and I know that's normal, particularly in the first couple of weeks of school. And because of that, it is necessary that they just continue to practice those routes.
Rebecca got tired, I'm taking over. Question 8, will the school board or Reliable be able to reimburse any new hires for licensing or endorsement expenses, maybe at 30, 60, or 90 days on the job? If not, are there any plans in place to help attract more local drivers?
Mr. Freeman, Mr. Richard Freeman, I continue to hear your voice in the audience. I don't see your name on this list, so if you want to talk, please sign up. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you to be quiet.
He's not the only one. And he's not. I'm not the only one. Mr. Freeman is not the only one. I'm not the only one. It's me out.
Yours is the only voice I recognize.
Does Dr. Couch or Mr. Dixon want to answer?
I'll try to address that. The question is reimbursement for hiring and licensing. Yes, we do pay for training. We pay for the licensing endorsements. We pay for the permits. The starting pay is $19.50 an hour. We continue to raise it. I think that's higher than any surrounding area. Also, there are benefits available: health care, short-term, long-term disability, life insurance. I think we're doing everything we can to continue to recruit drivers. We're going to advertise more. We're going to stay at it. We're cultivating our experienced drivers and people that we know in the community who have leads for driving. If anyone has anyone that they know of today while I'm here and they want to pass their information along who might be interested in driving, I'd love to have it.
Wasn't your bid for hourly rate at $22 an hour, or is that able to fluctuate, sir? You said your bid at $19.50, I believe your bid said it's $22 an hour. I didn't know.
She's asking if the bid that you submitted included an hourly wage of $22 per hour for drivers.
I think when you look at the bid, what you're going to want to consider is the total cost of hiring the driver. There are other costs that go into it. There are payroll taxes, there's workers' comp, there are other administrative costs that add to the wage of the driver. It's not simply the driver's wage. And I'll reiterate, I think that our wages that we're offering is, again, the highest in this area. And that includes Queen Anne's, Caroline, and Cecil, in addition to Kennedy.
Question 9. Question 9. Are any of the buses equipped with GPS? If not, could they be? I think we all know that there are dead spots in Kent County for cell phones. What kind of communication systems are currently installed on the buses?
The communication system, there are radios installed on the buses. We are exploring satellite GPS. We've discovered, again, as you said, that there are dead spots for cellular. So we are actively exploring the idea of having satellite GPS placed on the buses. Can I say that at this moment that we're going to do that? I think we have to explore the options and which ones might work better for this area.
Do your bus drivers answer the radio? I was told by 1727 that they do not use the radio. That's what I was told from your bus drivers.
That's the first of me hearing of it, and my understanding, and I do hear the drivers, I actively listen to the radio, so I respectfully disagree with you.
No, your bus driver told me that he went to Fairleigh and the kids called on the cell phone. She was supposed to come pick our kids up, and she declined and said we will send another bus. They tried to radio from the school, that's what I was told, and your bus driver on 1727, yes, said that they do not use the radio. So I do not think that that's a lie. That's what she said.
No, ma'am, I would never say that you're not telling the truth. I just said I respectfully disagree with you.
But 1727 did say that.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Question 10. Do we have a plan B if things do not improve? On what time frame will additional action be taken?
Yeah, I'm not at liberty to give those timelines out at this point. We met with legal counsel, and that's all I can say at this point.
I'm going to move on to question 11, and a lot of parents ask this. Will tardies and absences due to late buses be excused? Some parents are concerned because their children are being marked absent. Will the schools take care of that, or do parents need to keep track of when they are told their child has been absent, but the parent knows it was due to a late bus?
My understanding, Tracy, you want to, yeah.
So for these first couple of weeks, because we know we're having issues with the bus transportation, the secretaries, the principals have been told that for transportation, the code that they're using is, it's a B for buses. So if that is the issue, which it is in many cases, yes, they are coded that way, and it will not be held against your children.
Ms. Tracy, yes. So if it's coded that way, does it still go on wherever you're putting it? Does it still go as excused?
Yes,
or
it's an excuse.
Not on there at all?
Right. So sometimes when you look at the Power School, you know how one of the columns is the attendance, and it just totals them all up, but you can't tell whether it's excused or unexcused. It just totals them. We can see it, and we can allow you to see it too. If it is a B, it is an excused absence. What you're looking at, the only ones that are unexcused are the X's.
But you know, when you have unexcused and you have excused.
Yes.
And then excused also do tally up because you can
They
have
do.
so many excused.
Right.
But then they can also go against you, and you can go through truancy even with excuse because of unexcused and excused. So why are they being put onto paperwork as a B excuse? They shouldn't be on there at all, correct?
If the student's not there, you have to legally say whether the student is in school or not in school.
Yes.
So we've got to know who to account for.
That's correct.
Right.
So legally, Ms. Couch, isn't it your buses that are negligent? Yes. Doing truancy with our kids, and they have to put excused by buses. Why? Like we're not the problem, and they're coming to school, so they have to be excused because of a bus.
It won't count. It won't count for truancy.
But do you understand what I'm saying?
You're missing the point.
So the parents get,
Exactly. We would go to court.
getting your children to the bus stop or to the place where they need to go, but from the point that we either have to leave to go to work and or miss school or miss work, we are leaving your children there. They're not being picked up on time. They're not arriving to school on time. But at that point, they're not being. The buses aren't being accountable for the tardiness where the parents always have been.
Let me just tell you what B stands for. So when it's coded, B stands for, and this is, state of Maryland, because the codes are the same all over. So what it means is that an authorized transportation did not get your child to school.
Okay.
That's what B means.
Thank you.
Okay?
Question 12. Some parents feel that they should be reimbursed financially for lost work time and extra daycare. Is there a process for them to request compensation?
Not that I'm aware of.
Would the board consider creating a process for them to request compensation?
The board doesn't have the money.
Just say no.
Okay, question 13. Are there any current new hires who don't have routes yet because they are still going through training?
No, everyone who has been trained and hired is working.
This is good to get.
Question 14. Question 14. Some drivers seem to be adjusting their stops. How will you enforce designated stops? And if a stop is changed, how and when will parents be notified?
I'm not aware of drivers making intentional decisions to adjust their stops. I think that, and I certainly don't doubt that on occasion some of the drivers may have made mistakes, but to intentionally adjust the stops, I don't know why a driver would do that. I'm not aware that anyone has intentionally done that.
And let's also talk about how a parent will be notified if a change is adjusted. What communication will take place and from whom?
Well, if there's any change, the parents should be called, and we've certainly tried to do that. If we've fallen short, I offer my apologies, but that is the process to contact the parents.
Will that now that we're telling you that they are changing stops and the kids aren't being picked up, are you going to confront your drivers and get them to do what they were supposed to do? What's in their job description?
Again, I tell you that I'm not aware of any driver intentionally changing the stops.
And will those communications be...
But I would say this. Now that I'm aware of it, I certainly have no problem and intend to take a look at it, and if we find that it's true, then certainly it would be a disciplinary action on the driver.
And will that information be relayed from Reliable or from the school system?
I'm sorry.
The information when there's a change, when the parents are notified, will Reliable be the company or the entity contacting the parents, or will the school transportation department or schools be the ones contacting the parents?
I think the way it is now, I think you would expect it from both, but we certainly expect to notify you of any changes.
Can I ask a question to piggyback on that question? Are we ever going to find out what bus our kids are on and what the bus numbers are? Ever?
I think that's actually covered in my next question. Question 15. What is your plan for notifying parents of a change of bus or times if there is a breakdown or staff change during the school day? Will all schools use the same method? We've, I think, heard some Galena parents who were getting posts on our apps, which was great, about which buses were running late. We're just wondering if that could be an across-the-board feature.
They change buses every day. You don't know bus numbers. And then they do a robocall saying, come pick your kid up, but 1724 is not here. Well, we don't even know if our kids are on 1724.
Is there, and it was something that we kind of talked about also, is there, when do you expect to be able to compile a master list and distribute that information to parents about what the AM and PM buses will be, and hopefully not deviate from that list? When do you expect to have that list finalized?
I don't think that's a problem, getting you the list. I'm not sure what the method would be to distribute to all the parents.
I think that privately, I'll say that we had discussed that each child is assigned a student ID, and that the parent would be the only one who would know what that student ID was, and that potentially that information could be used to compile a list that was made publicly and edited in real time so that parents would know when an adjustment had been made without giving out any information about the kids, but I don't know if that is something that's possible.
Couldn't the bus information be
I'm certainly willing to work with you on that.
Can't we add the bus numbers to the website that the parents log on to get the kids' information?
On the school website?
Yeah, somewhere. I mean, we get onto the kids, like I can log into my daughter's Power.
Oh, in Power School.
Why
Okay.
can't the bus numbers be added to that webpage that I log on for?
Does Power School have the functionality to include notes? We have 3 more questions, and then we can move on. Here we go. Yes.
Schools themselves talk with the secretaries. They have the list available.
Okay.
They can tell you the bus that your child is on.
Okay, the information that we just received is that each school secretary has the information of what bus your child is on. I'm going to move on to the next question that you guys can ask as we go along. I'm getting tired of standing. Okay.
Doing very well.
Thank you. Question 16. Some parents have not been notified of bus number or driver name. How soon can they expect that information? If all of that is already in place, what is the best way for parents to receive that information? Since calls to the school board had not been returned as of the time we gathered these questions.
In the past in Kent County, hasn't it been in the newspaper, the routes that the buses take?
It's been a long time ago.
It's been a while, but is that something we could go back to so the parents know exactly where they're going to stop and where their kids are going?
The question is, can we put the bus list back in the newspaper? Was the question, in case you didn't hear. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question.
One of the things that we saw that's happening at Queen Anne's is they actually take just trying to talk about things that can be implemented differently. Okay, what I'm talking about.
Queen Anne's has buses on time.
No, I'm trying
We do. We have 2 more questions, and then we're able to sit back down. And I believe that this was answered earlier, but Mr. Dixon can probably answer it as well. Question 17. Other than CDL licenses and the bus endorsements, can you please list the process for hiring bus drivers? Are bus drivers required to be trained in CPR and first aid? We want to skip that? You got it. Question 18. Would the board consider closing school for a day or 2 to get the drivers better trained on the routes? And that concludes our questions. Thank you very much.
The next person on the list, Shannon Black. Shannon Black.
Oh, I know. I know everybody here being back there. That's so great. Okay, so my first question is, there were multiple breakdowns of buses over the county-wide.
My husband, being a commercial tractor trailer driver, has a pre-trip safety inspection that before that truck leaves, no matter he leaves in the morning and he gets back in it, that truck has to be inspected. There is a specific checklist. Had these drivers done the checklist, they would have known lights weren't working, fuel wasn't in the bus, that the stop sign didn't go out. There's multiple things that this is required by DOT, that it be done before every time someone gets in that bus and it leaves. Why is it not being done, or can you provide to show that these drivers have done their checklist?
The drivers are supposed to do a pre-trip. The supervisors monitor the pre-trip. I think one of the things that has been considered a breakdown is the buses are new to some of the drivers. While they may have driven Uber buses, they've driven a different model. And I think some have struggled with understanding the procedure and operating the bus, and it's given the appearance of breakdowns. We've had drivers who don't understand, or I guess it's newer to them, understanding the process for operating the bus. So we went back through, we've had some remedialized training with those drivers, and we'll continue to do that. But the pre-trip and the post-trip forms are required, and they are done on a regular basis.
So that's where my biggest question is, because I know in my husband's truck, and I've been in a bus, it's kind of common sense. When you see a button that looks like a light, you turn it on. I mean, you see a button that has a fuel gauge and it's almost on empty, you go put fuel in it before you go get kids. I mean, that right there, and to know that my child was on that bus and she was less than a quarter of a mile from my house and sat there for an hour, and I could have gone and picked her up, that was done for me right there. I lost all hope. And I mean, there was no way for that driver. She couldn't get off the bus because by law you're not allowed to leave the kids. So finally, somebody from Molly's that pulled in, went in and said, I think somebody needs to go out and help these people. We shouldn't have to do that. Had they had the CB radios, they could have radioed back to the school and said, I'm sick here. I mean, I know my daughter rides 1725, and I can say that bus does not have it on. Thank you. I physically watched, I put her on the bus, and there is no CB radio. The brackets are there, and there is no radio.
My 5-year-old finds that.
And for my daughter to come to me and tell me that the drivers are driving recklessly on the wrong side of the road. I mean, my daughter actually, one of the kids on the bus sat there and said, ma'am, you're going the wrong direction. And she was on her cell phone and said, no, you just need to sit down and shut up. You don't tell my kid to shut up. So right there we have a problem with communication between the drivers and speaking to the kids. It shouldn't be the kid's responsibility to come back to the parent and tell us those things.
No. And we should.
You want our kids to speak to those drivers with respect. The respect needs to come from that driver.
Steph and Andy Crestel.
Okay, first and foremost, as this county, we failed our kids. Completely. As a past volunteer firefighter, the worst call you can ever get is a bus accident. That is not something that needs to happen. And the way these buses are, it's going to happen. That is a parent's biggest fear. You wonder why we're angry. You wonder why we're upset. It's because we are the voices to our kids. For our kids. And that's what we're doing as parents. I don't have to worry about the buses. I have a senior in high school, and I live 5 minutes from the school in Galena. My son's bus in the afternoon wouldn't drop him off until 45 minutes after school got out. That's ridiculous. There are no radios on buses. Because if there was, then why do the board or the schools have a problem finding these children when they're lost? If there was a radio, our children would be found. And there's been many instances of children being lost on buses. Galena has stepped up big time. Miss Amy and Miss Cindy have alerted all of us whenever there is a bus issue. And I want for everybody to know that they have stepped up. And they should be thanked. And I hope all schools, and I'm sure all schools have, but I deal with Galena. But we need a change. You ask where the local drivers are? They have to find another job. You can't expect them to come back. That's unfair. You ask where the local drivers are? Well, I know for a fact that a local driver was cussed by somebody in Reliable at the depot. And you listened to it, Ms. Couch. And nothing was said. That's upsetting.
Yes, it is.
And that's not fair. So you wonder where local drivers are. What about their paychecks that aren't correct? You wonder where local drivers are. You failed them as well. And then you want them to come back? Us parents are the ones that have stepped up. We reach out to other parents and say, hey, do you want us to pick your child up? We'll help you. Thank God for farmers. Thank God for stay-at-home parents. Thank God for business owners. Because we can all step up and help these families that can't leave their jobs. Without other parents, many of these kids would be missing school. Think about that. Instead of getting mad at us for voicing our concerns and our anger, maybe you should thank us for stepping up.
Probably Mr. Dixon. How soon did you get your preliminary routes for the buses before the school year?
There were...
I want a time. I like how many days before the school year?
There were routes distributed in the beginning, I want to say, of August, but they were updated throughout.
Well,
there were about, I want to say, 3 updates.
Well, normally the local contractors get preliminary routes 2 Fridays before the school year starts. So they can practice their preliminary routes and they can get used to them. And then 1 Friday before the school year starts, they always got their final route that they could practice. Why aren't you guys practicing? They should have it down. And the other thing is, you usually parents got calls from the drivers on the routes for the kids, telling them what time they're going to be picked up. Why wasn't it done?
Well, sir, some parents were called if some were missed.
That's not acceptable.
I didn't even have a bus number.
Sir, we did make every attempt to call parents.
Did you run the routes?
Sir, I'm trying to answer your question. I know you're upset, but I can't answer your question unless I can at least complete my sentence. Some parents were called, some were missed because, again, we expected certain drivers to show up. So we did have other people, other administrative people, try to call as many parents as they could.
You tried, but you failed. But, you know, you've had plenty of time to get these buses ready. You've had plenty of time to have the stuff installed that was supposed to be installed. You've known you've got the contract since April. This stuff should have been done. There's no excuse for it. You should have had backup drivers hired in case somebody didn't show up. You should have had backup buses sitting in the depots. If one broke down, they could keep going. When you have multiple buses break down the first day, there's no excuse for that. There's nothing. That shouldn't happen. In the 20 years the other bus contractors did it, you didn't have this. Not once. Not once you didn't have all this. They were there. They called every day. We all grew up as locals knowing our bus drivers.
We have the same bus driver, morning and afternoon. Bus driver. It ain't no wonder the bus driver can't learn the route. In the morning, one bus driver runs it, in the afternoon, somebody else runs it. They run the same, they put, when the local contractors put on it, they ran the same route all the time, so they learned it. And they knew it. There was no excuse. These drivers are riding around with cell phones, using their phones. That's illegal by the law. That's dangerous. That's going to cause an accident. You know, and disrespectful, you say, talk about people say disrespectful to the drivers. The drivers start it because they're disrespectful to our kids and to us when we say something. So what do you think is going to happen back at them? It's no excuse for it. I mean, this has been too long. There's no excuse. You should have been prepared. You dropped the ball.
I just want to say, Mr. Wheeler, thank you. You stepped into this, and we respect you.
Thank you.
And we do not find you at fault.
That's right.
Yeah, right. Mr. Wheeler's put in a bad position, and I'm sure he's catching a lot of stuff, but it's not his fault. Because the problem that was caused is because of these people sitting right here. All I got to say is remember this come election time. They need to go.
Liz and Amanda.
My wife's aunt did bus service for a long time. She helped the special need, the handicap. She reapplied. You cut her, you cut her money $3 less than what she was getting.
Wow.
So she was forced to move on. I got 2 special need kids. They're both type 1 diabetics. Mr. Williams knows all about that. We called you guys over 10 times. No answers back. Discuss that.
Sir, can you tell me your name and your wife's name?
Emmanuel Zavatakis. My wife's name is Liz.
Sir, I have to be honest. I don't know your wife. And she did not apply for a job at
She
Reliance.
didn't apply on a job. I said she called me 10 times to try to find out the bus route and talk to you guys about my kids' health care.
I can't put my kids on the bus because I don't know a bus driver's name. That's not safe for my children.
My kids need health care. If you ignore it, they die.
Yes.
Well, sir, I certainly would
No
not.
excuses. I don't even want to listen to you talking.
Senator Gretchen Stroh.
They rode the buses for 3 or 4 years. Just fine. Now they can't ride the bus.
You gotta use your gas to get them there.
Yep.
Who's paying for that?
I got put overtime.
Guys, can you give Mrs. Stroh some time to speak, please?
Hi. Many students have had problems in the afternoon. It appears the transportation department at the administration offices closes before all the children are delivered. Also, school offices stop answering phone calls too early to answer concerns about late or missing buses. There needs to be an administrator who can be contacted until all children have been safely delivered to their stops. This appears to be a glitch in the system. Who do we call at 5 o'clock when the bus hasn't arrived? Who can we call at 3:45 if the school staff have left? There needs to be an emergency number that is staffed to follow through with these issues in real time. I know that today bus 1724 wasn't running in the afternoon, and when a parent called the school at 3:45, the recording said offices were closed. The other thing, my big concern is that the cameras aren't on the buses, which is going to open the school system to a lot of liability issues. And reliable have liability issues. And the other thing is, I know for a fact, having talked to one of the most experienced local bus drivers a week before school started, she didn't know where she was going to be driving. She wasn't even sure if she was going to be driving for reliable. And it's just terribly upsetting because this is the most reliable, trustworthy person who's been driving my son for 12 years now. And how could they not be telling them a week before school started if they even had a job? Thank you.
Jerry Bramble.
First of all, good evening, board members, Dr. Couch. I assume it's a good evening still, but nevertheless. Audience, my name is Jerry Bramble. I'm a former 34-year veteran, longest tenured bus driver I was until the debacle occurred. A brief history's already been given mostly about the situation, what occurred. I will say, though, that I do honestly feel this could have been avoided if Dr. Couch had not been reluctant to discuss the situation with our LLC administrative personnel. And there are reasons, and I'm not going to go into the reasons why she was reluctant to, okay? She may not admit that, but trust me, I'll swear on the Bible, that's a fact, okay? Now, after having said that, of course, after that, the contract was awarded to Reliant, who obviously has, for various reasons, shown a very inept, poor performance to this point. Again, various reasons. And also, I understand as of 1 o'clock today, the general manager resigned from Reliable. Is that a fact, Mr. Dixon? Is that a fact?
Mr. Van Dyke stated that for health and family reasons, he did suffer an illness earlier, and he indicated they need to spend more time with his family, and I accept that, and I respect him for it, and I appreciate the service that he gave us.
I know that. Excuse me, folks. Mr. Van Dyke was under a great deal of stress, obviously. That's an understatement, I realize, because of the situation. He was catching a lot of the flack, a lot of the blame. Not all his fault, obviously. Now, the other issues, the complaints from you folks, you pretty well covered probably 90% of them, I would guess. I know there are newspapers, TV ads, or not ads, TV reporting has been involved in various locations. I think that the audience knows that newspapers and various other publications of newspapers, TV's been involved. Hopefully, this will get resolved, but I can tell you folks, from my 34 years experience, this is not going to be resolved anytime soon unless drastic measures are taken. Drastic times require drastic measures, okay? I would also tell you that the board and Dr. Couch, obviously, in the position they are, have sugarcoated a lot of these incidences in the paper. There's a fact, and I'm not being disrespectful, I'm just telling you the facts. And what has been said, and what you folks' comments are. In the Star Democrat, there was a huge article. I read it word for word, and there is a lot of sugarcoating and dancing around the problem. Okay. Now, after having said that, what I suggest, and again, I'm very low on a very high totem pole, folks, so anyway, I feel for what is essential to resolve this, which seems like no one at this point up here has got a solution, okay, that the first step, and there's going to take a lot of will, guts, to implement and carry this out, and that would be to hire Ms. Hall back as supervisor of transportation. No offense to Mr. Wheeler. No offense at all. He's very inexperienced. He's very inexperienced. He stepped into a hornet's nest. He's paying the price for it. Okay? Now, Ms. Hall was excellent. Excellent. She knew every stop. She knew every kid. She knew every faculty member. She knew how to operate TransFinder. In case you folks don't know what that is, that's an assist method that she used to determine the stops, change them, so it was printed out and everyone was on the same page as far as the routes.
Why isn't she still here?
She is not here because she knew what was going to occur. She anticipated this. Only I don't think she anticipated this to this extent. Just like I anticipated it, but not nearly to this extent. I'll be very honest with you. But for whatever the price is, whatever it costs, if you can persuade, coax, get Ms. Hall back, that would be a step for them. Contract, obviously, and considering the fact that they've already consulted counsel, that tells me the contract is definitely breached. Lack of performance, lack of negligence, lack of performance, and just an inept willingness to try to do the right thing and accommodate you folks here in this county.
Yes. I said it the first day.
Hold on, folks. Let me get there. Okay. Number 3. Bring back the previous contractors. A lot of them sold their buses, but they are willing. The majority of them, they are willing to come back and try to help make this work. And also, they can acquire used buses. There are used buses out there with the help of I.G. Burton, American Bus Sales in Annapolis. Buses can be bought. Hold on, I can't hear everyone. Anyone have a question about the bus being brought back?
I work for Brenda for our guys, so you know who I am.
Yes.
Okay, now, Friday I took off from work because I was really stuck in the car and the buses and everything. Okay, so Sunday comes, I text twice. I'm the no-show. They're saying no-show. I didn't go. Twice, and I have it on my phone that I was not coming to work. Okay, I get a text back that if I don't work for them, I can never drive a school bus in Kent County again.
Hold on.
Wow.
Hold on, folks. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention because that was a question that I had for Dr. Couch that I understand was said, and here's an opportunity whether she can confirm or deny it. But the question is, Dr. Couch, it was said, again, possibly fact, that you made the comment that if anyone left reliable transportation to drive for the old LLC or independent contractors, that they would be disqualified, decertified. Is that true?
What I said was, at that time, I was looking at potential subcontracting, and what I didn't want to do is to create a situation where we were taking local away to fill local. My desire was to look at filling, you don't rob Peter to pay Paul. So
Hold on.
there was a situation of just looking at hiring all local, and if some did not want to work for Reliable, then you look at other ways. If you're just playing, just moving the chips around, then you're not solving the problem. I was looking for a way to solve the problem.
I understand. But when you agree that these people that are local drivers for Reliable are going to be more willing to work for local contractors than they did prior to this debacle and crisis that's occurred, you wouldn't buy that?
I was looking to hire.
I understand. You're dancing, you're doing the politics thing with me, man. Liberal politics. It's politics at its best. You six people are so liberal, you will not address the problems head on, you dance around the problem, and this is the result. I'm not going to agree with you, I know that. Like I said, I'm very low on the totem pole, you're very high on the totem pole.
So why did you agree our kids can't get rides?
If you brought back the local contractors as independent contractors, no LLC, then you would have the flexibility. If someone didn't perform up to your standards or the code, the standards required, you could eliminate one or two people. One contractor, maybe a driver, maybe two people, two drivers, rather than dismantling the whole system. You know, I think your arrogance has got you into this position. Now that's my three-step proposal for an immediate fix, because folks, this is not going to go away. No, it's not. Trust me. This is going to persist because you still have an inexperienced supervisor of transportation, you've got an inexperienced contractor for this area, you've got an inexperienced board. Just add up the facts, and they all reveal disaster which is occurring. I just pray to God they're in a crisis with a kid in this county due to this.
Did the LLC that you were a part of go up $1.2 million on the contract? Because we still have not heard whether that was...
I will clarify that for you.
Thank you.
And in this case, I'm going to tell you like it is. I'm going to give you the facts. Okay? You cannot blame all in that case. They perfectly were permitted, authorized to bid. Okay? It was open. That again comes from up here. Okay, now after having said that, there were people in our LLC that, well, I don't want to get derogatory, but anyway, were just clueless about what was going on with this process. They thought that they were going to be able to bid $1.8 million and have a chance of being awarded this contract.
Right.
Our lawyer repeatedly told us, if you bid $1.8 million, put for sale signs on your buses. You're not going to get it. So, did they compromise at all? No. So, that is the fact. No, there was no counter offer. It was dead set at that point. They were awarded the contract.
Well, when it's, excuse me, wait a minute. Excuse us. What Mr. Bramble is saying is very accurate.
Now you're talking.
No, that's true. What he's saying is the bid that came in was much higher than what had been previously paid. When you go out for an RFP and you submit and you collect your bids, you cannot then engage in negotiating with other parties. That's not the way it goes. Well, I could say there was fault on side of why would you go up $1.2 million above what there is.
Hold on, folks. Whoa. Listen, hold on just a second, please. Now, after having said that it seems like always money is an issue with a government-controlled operation, local or state, okay? Hey, hold on there, Chief. Just give it a rest, okay? Listen. And Mrs. Couch got a raise and a 4-year new contract. Other people in the administration got raises. Several good employees left due to this situation. Okay? I can tell you folks that